Good afternoon. I know it's been a while since I've done this or released a podcast even. I just put one up with Ryan Holloway, who is the executive director of CareNet Peninsula. It's a good conversation, especially in light of recent events. Well, obviously that's why I wanted to talk to him in general to start with. The reason I'm doing this, though, is because I was editing the podcast and sitting in my garage with my dog, listening to the rain, drinking good scotch, and thinking about how important it is to have a meaningful understanding of meaning. And obviously Roe is what everyone's talking about. I'm certainly behind the curve on that. But in thinking about that conversation, it really becomes clear that the secular humanist movement has very little ability to define meaning at all on any real level. And that's what all of this hinges on, truth and meaning. I have a favorite G.K. Chesterton passage in the book called Orthodoxy. He's talking about the things that he began to realize before he had any understanding of who God is. He talked about some revelations that he came to understand. There are 5 of them. I'm just going to read a couple of them. So this is in a chapter called The Ethics of Elfland, and he talks about the fact that the truth about the world is so absurd, and it's so real, but it's so absurd that it feels like magic. So he says, "Second, I came to feel as if magic must have a meaning, and meaning must have someone to mean it. There was something personal in the world, as in a work of art. Whatever it meant violently." And then he goes to, I'll skip number 3, fourth, that the proper form of thanks to it is some form of humility and restraint. We should thank God for beer and burgundy by not drinking too much of them. We owed also an obedience to whatever made us. And last and strangest, there had come into my mind a vague and vast impression that in some way all good was a remnant to be stored and held sacred out of some primordial ruin. Man had saved his good as Crusoe had saved his goods. He had saved them from a wreck. I think those are 3 aspects of coming to terms with meaning in the world that the secular humanist movement has no relationship to. Firstly, that there is meaning at all, an objective meaning, and that we have a responsibility to have a good response to that meaning. Namely, he talks about restraint and obedience to whatever meant the meaning in the first place. Which again, obviously, we have this. He didn't have this when he wrote that. He wasn't a believer, but we have a responsibility to be obedient to God's law to the point of self-restraint. And the last thing he says is to preserve the good, using the imagery of Robinson Crusoe preserving his goods from the shipwreck. Yeah, I don't know. It's a small thought that I had, those 3 things. But the people who are arguing for the murder of children certainly don't have any meaningful definition of truth as an objective standard of reality. They certainly don't have any understanding of what it is to exercise self-restraint in response to that truth. And I think that their conduct in not simply defending, but promoting as certainly a highest ethic, the violent dismemberment and destruction of children is a pretty good indicator that they have no inclination to preserve good in any real way. So I'm just grateful for the conversation I had with Ryan, for men that have a desire to pursue and hold on to those things, pursue meaning and truth and goodness and the preservation thereof. Men like Ryan and Clarence Thomas and faithful pastors and devoted fathers. So here's to you.